yourself to this piece of paper and, I don't know, maybe you can think of something that I say today that you might want to think about a little bit more later. You can reference back to it. Not that I'm going to say anything that particularly noteworthy today, but maybe you want to ponder something. But really, more than likely, I'm going to upset some of you today. And I want you to write down what it is about what I say that maybe makes you angry. And you can analyze the why later. You might want to call the association office and complain to our association minister, Reverend Rita Root. Her phone number is 330-453-8178. I'm serious. Her phone number is 330-453-8178. See, you think your church is at a crossroads, and you have numerous choices that you can make. I have this perception that this is really a cliff, and it's like Sergeant Snorkel and Beetle Bailey hanging on by that branch, hanging off the edge of the cliff, except this isn't funny. And if I come off a bit hard-edged today, let's blame it on Uncle Sam. And I'm a former Marine Corps officer, and sometimes we come off a little bold. It's in our nature. Today's lesson is the story of what hasn't been said. It's time to face some difficult facts. When I was here in 2010, on just a regular, plain old Sunday, no particular holiday, you had 35 people in worship. Last Sunday, Easter Sunday, the highest of the Christian holidays, there were 24. And I think there's 18 of us today. Is such a trend sustainable? I doubt it. How did you get to this point? The same way that literally 98% of American churches have gotten to this point. They're irrelevant. It's not complicated. Books have been written, scholarly papers have been published, numerous blogs have been posted. And much of it I doubt, because they spend so much time trying to one-up each other with their analyses. There's not that much to analyze. It's our fault. Church professionals have made the mistake of making church about church. We use churchy language and we do churchy things that are meaningless to a person who is struggling through life's journey. What we are doing right now is irrelevant to a family that's out to breakfast or sleeping in or falling apart. We do things like debate evolution versus intelligent design, or argue over who's allowed to marry who, while 3 million Americans are homeless, 20% of our children live in abject poverty, and others spend more time raising money for their kids' sports teams instead of raising their children to care about serving others. Does a God that is powerful enough to create an ever-expanding universe, whether you believe it started 4,000 or 14 billion years ago, really require, I don't know, Jesus cried out and breathed his last, and that temple curtain was torn in two, it revealed that God wasn't hiding behind that curtain, that God didn't live in that or any temple. God does not live in a box. So why do we keep trying to squish God into a box? There's nothing behind that cross except a wall. And it's a wall of our own making. And the world won't come in the doors of a church because all they see are walls. A plain, boring, old box. Does anybody look for something new in something old? I doubt that. Jesus used the technology and the customs of his day to preach his message. He drew in the sand. He talked about the theater. And he sent people out ahead of him to drum up excitement in the next town. Why can't we use motion pictures, which is 120-year-old technology, by the way, to share Jesus' message? Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. It's repeated in 4 of the Psalms and in Isaiah 42. 1,000 years, a millennium before Christ, they were already saying, let's quit doing it the way we've always done it. So why do we cling to songs and customs in an outdated language? What would we do if we didn't have Nancy here to play the organ for us? Because I know in my home church, it's the same problem. The substitute organists have gone extinct before the organists have. Well, I realize contemporary worship is too daunting of a task, and I'm not suggesting that that's going to save any church, okay? It does require more effort on the part of the people that organize it. But the biggest mistake I see is that church professionals think of contemporary worship merely as modern music and videos, but everything is still worship within the confines of a worship service. In that context, it's doomed to failure. And how do I know about this? I'm aware of 2 very large churches, not mega churches, but very large churches in the EOA that already got rid of their contemporary worship services. And I know of a third that's well on their way to screwing it up. And yet, they're wringing their hands over declining attendance. But beyond worship style, let's get back to what I think is the real issue here, and that's relevance. Who is going to give up a chunk of their free time to attend a worship service? And I think we just identified the problem. It's not that we are selfish with our free time, but churches have been busy with the busy work of what churches do, including worship services. Instead of worshiping God with our service. It's that simple. Service is the worship that God desires. And there's a very large percentage of the world that will not enter the doors of any church because they doubt it is worth their time. We live in what's called a postmodern time. And the postmodern seeker is not looking for a worship service. They are looking for more meaning in their lives. They're looking for something to do with their free time or their charitable money. They want to be social. They want to be active. They want to be engaged. And they will do it in a time of upbeat music and media. But there has to be a message that their time is going to provide some sort of direct help. And that they're going to be able to make a positive difference. They want proof that their contribution counts for something. Whether it's financial or physical. The postmodernist is not looking for a weekly hour of worship, especially to an abstract deity. They will respond to that social time of music and media. But the audience is fickle, to the extent that if they're not feeling it, they're gone. It doesn't make them less dedicated to God. It is a reality of what they perceive as meaningful use of their time. Can anyone come in here and resuscitate this church? Well, sure. You can get somebody in here and use the lectionary and preach a comfortable sermon every week. One that doesn't make you squirm in your seat. But the money's still going to run out. Or you can get somebody in here that's going to promise you that, just work a little bit harder. We can make it all happen. I sincerely believe that you're working as hard as anyone could expect you to. Time will still run out. If you are willing to call someone that will help you determine what the responsible stewardship of this church's resources are, and I'm saying responsible stewardship of your resources. That's not just money. That's all of your resources, especially your time. And then help you plan and then implement that plan of action. Then you can honestly tell God that you have done everything that you can. And there's no shame in that. Because you don't know for sure what's at the end of that plan that's not made yet. Well, can you turn it around? I don't know. I remember a video that our first contemporary pastor made, and I don't remember who said it, I just remember this particular quote, and it said, "To say that something is impossible is to slam the door in the face of God." It's a riff on the Mark and Matthew gospel passage. So is your situation impossible? Not if you give up your doubts about what I'm sharing with you today. But if you insist on only clinging to the past, you're going to lose your grip on that branch on the edge of the cliff. Well, whose piece of paper is still blank? Who's run out of room? Who quit listening 2 minutes in and started drawing horns on my head? I know. Probably thinking, I can't possibly know anything about what's happening in Wyndham is not a vacuum. Wyndham is in the world. And Wyndham is not so unlike a lot of other towns the same size. There's difference between our country churches and our urban churches, but we still share a lot of things. Well, here's the rest of today's lesson that usually goes unsaid. Okay, so Jesus' first appearance was to Mary Magdalene on Easter morning. His second appearance was to 10 disciples who were shut up inside their walls, hiding in their box. Thomas wasn't there. Thomas was outside those walls. Thomas was out of the box.